And yeah, guys, let's go ahead and bring on in Evan from Rocklin Graves Productions. How you doing, Evan? Good to see you, man.
Good, good. Yeah, thank you for the glowing intro you gave there. That was very kind of you.
I could have kept on going. Here, we'll pop you back out. No, I'm
Oh
just
my.
joking.
To be clear, my videos are all completely scripted. There's no way any of that's coming. I'm reading off
Yeah.
a teleprompter.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be able to tell that. That's awesome. And I do think scripted is a really good way to go. Like, I don't do pre-recorded stuff as much, but yeah, I definitely like have my things where I'm like, oh, I have to mention this, and I just try to find the most natural way to bring it up. But
Sure.
what I do really appreciate about what you do over there is it's like I can tell that it comes from this place of, really loving what you're experiencing when you watch a film, or just when you watch film in general. And then there's that knowledge, right? Because there's definitely a spectrum of knowledge with audience members, and so it's really interesting to me to listen to somebody that is picking up on the smaller nuances and stuff like that. And full disclosure, I was like that guy when I was a kid in high school, where like I made my friends rewatch these movies and tried to talk to them about them all the time. And I think my friends were like, dude,
Yeah.
like, you're like this close to getting kicked out of the group.
Yeah.
And I kind of feel that vibe there. Is
Well,
that
I mean, totally. I've
go ahead.
always said that I started the channel because I wanted to talk about horror way more than anyone around me wanted to hear about it. It's really just storytelling in general. Like, I'm just such a nerd for stories. Be it a movie, TV show, book, a video game, whatever the hell you want to talk about. I love the mechanics of storytelling. I'm very drawn to that kind of thing, and to have this outlet where I just get to basically nerd out in the most self-indulgent way I possibly can is pretty fun.
Yeah, no, it's got to be awesome, especially like, I had mentioned that you've seen like a pretty significant channel growth here, especially this year in 2024. I mean, you just crossed 40,000 probably like a week ago or something like that. Like last, right? Because you
It was
were
a couple days ago. Yeah, I think it was on Friday the 13th.
right. I think it was before, because we did the Terrifier thing on Thursday, and
It
you
was
had
that
mentioned
night.
that you would. Okay, so it was that night. So we're about a week out, and I was just scrolling around today on your channel. I'm like, oh, and he's already passed 41,000. Like, like, but that's the cool thing about YouTube, is they sort of reward you. And then I think another thing too about like what you do specifically is that, it's got that higher production value because it's coming from, a really informed, well thought out source. Like your Dracula, the Bram Stoker's Dracula thing was awesome. Like,
Oh, geez, thank you. That video tanked, so I appreciate you saying that.
oh, I had a great time with it. It made me want to like sit down and watch the movie right away. So
It's a great movie.
yeah, and it is cool to hear. It's refreshing just to hear everything looked at in a fair way. So it's like, hey, the things that don't work for you, like you find a smooth way of articulating that. So to where it's not like you're, all the stuff that I love has things about it that I don't really love. But sometimes in this day and age, people sort of want to think of like, oh, you're either trashing it or you're praising it. And like, how do you like, have you always been that nuanced? Is that something that you've gained like the older you've gotten? And
I don't know if I've always been that nuanced, but I'm sure when I was younger, I was probably a little more black and white about things. But it's certainly something that I like to focus on my channel, is to try and make sure that I'm being like level-headed and nuanced and acknowledging the gray, because that's where I think the most interesting stuff is. I have no interest in just falling 100% into one camp or another when it comes to anything. Generally, I like to try and find things that I don't like about movies that I love, and I like to try and find good things within movies that are overall things that I didn't connect with. Which I think, like Exorcist Believer, was an interesting video for me because I didn't give it a positive review at all. It's a mess of a movie, and I bashed it a lot, but there were a couple things that I acknowledged for being good. So then I've kind of got this reputation now where people are like, yeah, this guy thought Exorcist Believer was like a great movie. It's like, God, like, no.
Yeah,
You
just
gotta
wait
be
until you
able
hear
to-
what yeah, just wait until they hear about how you feel regarding Halloween Ends.
Well, I
Right.
mean, that I'm never going to live that one down. But my
But I
favorite comments come on the Halloween Ends video because I get a lot of comments of people who are like, I still don't like the movie, but now I understand why someone would. I'm like, that's my favorite kind of comment.
yeah.
I don't need to convince you to change your mind, but if I can give like another perspective where you then go, oh, okay, maybe I didn't see it like that, and you can
Mhm.
at least respect it from a certain angle, that's my favorite thing. I love that.
Yeah, and even giving it another chance, like if you didn't like it, I think that's a really big thing.
Yeah.
We talk about that a lot over here on the channel. That's one thing I won't shut up about because, I like a lot of movies that maybe like take some pretty big swings, and even if they not every ball gets hit out of the park, like to me, because I come from a creative background from like, playing music for so long in my life and everything, I like to sort of, I feel like the audience to a certain degree needs to meet the creator like part way. It doesn't necessarily have to be halfway, but
Yeah.
it's almost like sometimes you got to give them a little credit. Like I'm a big, I'm a big Rob Zombie Halloween 2 fan. Like, of course, not everything about it, but
Were we talking
I,
about that on the show the other night?
we may have mentioned that the other night on the Terrifier 2 stream. Yeah,
It
and
wasn't with
it
you. We mentioned it on Beyond the Splattered Graves recently because I also like that movie.
yeah, and that's one of those things where it's like, it just celebrated 15 years. And so, put together a little video talking about it, and that was same kind of thing. People dropping comments that are like, I'm watching this movie again and giving it another shot because
Yeah.
of, your this stream,
It's the
and so
best.
it is really cool. And I think it's like, is that something that you find, does that like bleed into other things in your life? Like you don't have to get specific, but just like the way you feel, maybe feel about like social issues or whatever. Do you find that, having that kind of take a step back, think about the thing?
Oh, did he freeze or did I freeze? Someone's frozen.
Oh, there we go. I'm back. Sorry,
Okay.
everybody. The internet's struggling. Are you there, Evan?
Yeah, I'm here. You're all good.
Sorry. Every now and then in the desert, I don't know, internet
Sure.
gets kooky.
Yeah,
But I
my
was curious.
igloo gets issues sometimes too. It's all good.
Nova Scotian igloo.
Yeah.
So do you find that nuance and everything bleeds into other things, like other aspects of your life where, you try to take the most fair-minded look? And do you think that's something that was inspired by the way that you analyze art?
I don't know if it was inspired by the way that I analyze art, but I definitely do tend to play the middle on a lot of things. Just like in general. And I think one of the most important qualities to develop as you get older is to understand when you don't know enough about something to weigh in on it. So
Sure.
for me, I always try to like figure out how much information I have about something and how qualified I am to, you know,
Sure.
share my stance on
Exactly.
it. But yeah, I tend to try to be like neutral and pay attention to nuance and things. But of course, as with everyone, it's not always the case, and there are some things where I'm just a narrow-minded idiot about it. So it depends, I suppose.
All
But yeah,
right.
I
Fair
don't
enough. Fair
tend to
enough.
fall like super aggressively into like one way or another.
Sure.
On most things, I tend to wind up like somewhere in the middle.
Absolutely. I totally hear you. And I think sometimes even with me, like I like to rewatch movies and like re-experience, the art that I really enjoy. And is the bunny okay? As long as the bunny is okay.
The bunny's all good. Yeah, he's chilling.
Okay. What was I saying? I was saying something and it was gonna lead to something else. But hey, how about we'll just switch gears here? You've got a piano there. I can see it, so you can't lie to me and say it doesn't exist.
There's another one back there.
Oh, perfect.
An acoustic.
Are you? And I'm guessing you're a big music guy.
Yeah. Music is. Sorry, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, is that like one of your big loves, like your first love?
Yeah, creatively, music was definitely the first thing I was drawn to. Like even before I got infatuated with like more direct forms of storytelling. I've been playing music pretty much my whole life. I play guitar and piano, and I also do my very damnedest to sing. And I love it. It's something I haven't been able to do as much recently because I'm working through a strain injury from playing too much.
Oh, geez.
So I haven't really been able to play a ton recently. which is why I'm grateful that I have other creative outlets outside of music. But yeah, music is something that is very, very near and dear to my heart, and I, have leather pads for fingertips at this point for playing guitar so much. Um, yeah, and
Yeah,
and you're also you play guitar, is it?
yeah, I grew up playing. I did like classical lessons for a couple years, and then did rock lessons on guitar.
Yeah,
Started my own band, and I was like 13 or something like that.
sure.
Just cheesy pop punk kind of stuff that I was into. I grew up
Yeah,
listening to like 80s, 90s skate punk, like No
yeah,
Effects and Face to Face and stuff like that. So, yeah, bass, guitar, sing. I like to write
awesome.
songs. I like to help people produce songs too. I think that's been one of my favorite things. So,
It's fun.
have you been in bands before? Or do you have somewhere like where people can listen to your music like right
Uh,
now?
yeah, I mean, yeah, I do. I record my own music. I'm working on an album right now, actually, with
Sweet.
some songs I've been sitting on for way too long that I finally want to get recorded. Um, I mean, I have music up on Spotify just under my name. It's just an album that I released many years ago, which I I don't think turned out well. But there's a single that I did with a guy from Australia called, his name was Behind Sundown is what he goes by, and I did a song with him that's also on Spotify. You can find it on my page. Um, but I do have like a music centric YouTube channel where I'll upload like original songs or covers of things every once in a while. Using this thing. I used to do it very regularly, but it's more of an occasional thing now.
Gotcha. Okay. So total blind spot. My bad. I should add that to the description.
I
Totally
don't
missed
share it
that
like
one
I
there.
don't really share it much. I haven't talked about it, so it's not a blind spot on your part.
Well, and YouTube is such a jerk anyways because it made me wait so long to find your channel to begin with. So, what can you do? But
Yeah.
isn't that kind of how you always feel though? Like I feel the same way like every record I've ever worked on where it's like I feel like all George Lucasy about it where after it comes out I'm like, "Oh, if only I had more time. Like I
Yeah.
could go back and redo it and blah blah blah."
Well, and what happened with that the last, I guess it was an EP. It's about a half hour long. What happened with that one was that I got too frustrated trying to. The issue was I was trying to learn how to record music while recording an album, which is not how you should do it.
Sure.
So I wound up just getting really frustrated with it and compromising way too much on the recording side of things.
Mhm.
And I think the writing in the songs was good, but I think I honestly ruined it with how poorly it was recorded. I mean, I've even considered going back and just redoing a lot of it, but right now my focus is on this
Yeah.
this new record that I'm piecing together, which I feel very good about, and I'm excited to put it out there.
Hell yeah, man.
Yeah,
Let us know when it's ready to go and I'll
yeah, I will.
give it a listen and spread the word.
I
For
appreciate
sure.
that.
I love that shit. Now do you write, is it, you said you try to sing, like, do you have some, is it some of it instrumental or is it all like singer songwriter kind of stuff and you're just being,
There,
self-deprecating about your
there,
voice?
most of it is singer songwriter. Most of what I do,
Cool.
but I also do like some instrumental stuff. Like I like writing just like solo piano pieces as well. I've been working on some like kind of somber, dark classical music recently, which has been a lot of fun to work on because I love that kind of like old ghosty vibe. Um,
Yeah.
which is kind of a lot of the pieces I've been working on are kind of, it's been interesting because I'm tying them into a book that I'm working on right now. So while I'm writing the piece, I'm like imagining images from this book. So that's been an interesting like creative journey. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah,
That's
it's most.
wild. You're an insanely creative guy.
I just have
You're all
ADHD. I
over
just
the
can't
place.
stay
It's
focused
great.
on one thing.
Oh.
That's all it
No,
is.
but that's really like it is amazing though just to be able to put your energy into that and not only, be able to do that, but just to conceive the ideas to begin with. I
Mm,
think that's pretty unique.
sure.
Doing the music and writing a story to go along with it. Are there any like are there like any movie soundtracks or scores that stand out in particular to you? I mean, outside of the bangers that we all know, the Terrifiers and the Halloweens and everything like that, is there something that like maybe some people are sleeping on?
Are we talking about horror
I mean, really, whatever.
specifically?
I'm,
Um,
I'd imagine you're a massive film fan just overall, right?
yeah. I guess people aren't really sleeping on this. You ever seen the movie Her, the Joaquin Phoenix movie, or Spike Jones, I
I
suppose.
haven't.
The
I know what you're
soundtrack to
talking
that
about,
movie
but I
is
haven't.
absolutely incredible. One of the most beautiful things I've ever heard. But it's not really slept on. It's very well respected. So I'm just looking through my library here. I'm gonna throw out an oddball here.
All right.
There is a series on YouTube. It's all an animation that's all been drawn in paint, frame by frame. And this guy's been doing it for many years. It's the Big Les Show. You ever seen that?
No.
So it's a really weird, silly Australian stoner comedy that was started by this guy when he was in high school. But then it got progressively more introspective as the years went on. And it's very interesting. So there's the Big Les Show is the main thing, and then they have a couple like spin-offs like Sassy the Sasquatch. But the soundtracks in those series are some of the most beautiful things I have ever heard. It's truly incredible, and like there are certain pieces from the soundtrack to like Sassy the Sasquatch, for example, that have literally inspired full stories that I'm like fleshing out now, because there's such
Damn.
a deep emotionality at the core of some of the writing there. Trying to look through though. There's
Yeah,
so
that's
many.
amazing. I'll have to check this out. I've never like heard of this before, but it reminds me kind of the you ever see the Brad Neely stuff?
I don't think so.
The like China, Illinois, and he did all these ridiculous songs. It looks like similar animation, like this
Okay,
really fun, like, you know, pretty basic but like really charming kind of
sure.
way of doing the animation.
Oh yeah,
Hell
it's
yeah, I'll have to
fun.
check these guys out for sure.
Yeah,
And Liana says Atonement score is incredible. I haven't seen Atonement.
Atonement. I mean, there are so many. Like I love soundtracks. The soundtrack to like the series Broadchurch. Have you ever seen that British cop drama? Um, Amazing.
My
Absolutely
that's all
incredible.
my parents watch are the British cop dramas.
So
I
you
haven't seen
must have
them.
really haven't seen Broadchurch?
I haven't. I'm terrible.
Wow.
I'm still rewatching, you know, all the Friday the 13th and
Sure.
the
Necromechanical Mew is amazing. I love his music. Absolutely fantastic.
Hell yeah. Yeah, I'll have to check that out.
Yeah.
And so do you have any aspirations of like, you know, I mean, maybe at some point working on a film as far as the writing standpoint, or do you shoot? Are you interested in directing, or do you at least want to like put together some music for a movie?
I mean my ultimate goal career wise is to get into telling my own stories, be that through writing, directing movies, or through writing books or whatever it is. That has been like a serious passion for me over the last couple of years that I discovered like fairly late. Like it wasn't until I was like 19, 20 where I was like, I could write some stories. And then I got really into it. Like working on this book has been a very eye-opening experience where I was like, oh, this is what I need to be doing. So yeah, I
Mhm.
mean, absolutely. I have a short film, well, two or three short films that I've been mulling over. Main roadblock has been just finding casting for them. Um,
Oh yeah.
but yes, I'm absolutely planning on getting into the creative side of storytelling as well, because as you know, love what I'm doing and I'm incredibly grateful for all of this, but I really want to
Mhm.
just be telling my own stories ultimately. What about you? Do you want to do that kind of stuff, or
I wouldn't be against it. I've got my ideas and my, you know, stories that I, you know, write the pieces out in my head, and how much makes it to the page is
yeah,
that's the struggle for me, I guess. But yeah, I mean, I'm a huge like you know, I love stuff like The Evil Dead. Like that's one of my favorite franchises, and
me too.
like ever since they started like kind of branching out and kind of going wherever they want with the story, but with the caveat that there's 3 books that exist like within this universe, but they're all just different volumes of the Book of the Dead. I'm just like, oh my God, there's so many possibilities for that. So I'm like, uh, thinking about writing like an old Western kind of Evil Dead
They can
story.
do anything now. There's
uh,
so much potential.
yeah. The ones that I've thrown out a couple times, it's like an old Western. I would like to see one in like Northern Africa during the
Oh
colonial
yeah,
days. And then I'd even like to see one where it's like one of the books is on like one of Columbus's ships, and that's like explains how it gets to the Americas. But that also explains like a whole bunch of crazy shit that happens on that journey.
Hell yeah.
So those are my just like wacky ideas. And then, you know, I think I mentioned this the other week when we were on the stream. I grew up in Southeast Alaska, and I'm a huge, like, Romero is one of my favorite, like probably my favorite director. Like I love his first like 4 zombie films. I love The Crazies is great. Martin is one of like the best edited films I've ever seen, and like a sleeper for his best, at least his best outside of the Dead series. But so I have this idea, like I have a lot of this story written out that's basically like a Romero style zombie story that takes place in my hometown. And the thing about that is there's no road in or out, so it was boat or air is how you got out. So if the zombie apocalypse happened, you'd figure that they could have some semblance of like a regular life, but similar to like Day of the Dead or Dawn of the Dead, like through time, like the power structure would start to become corrupted, and you know, people would want something different than what everyone else wanted. And like, you know, it's so sort of playing into like the politics of how that can all go. And I just had an idea to call it like Dead Winter. And so it's just this, I don't know, Romero style zombie. I miss those days. And not to say that The Walking Dead isn't a Romero style zombie, but I feel like TV shows just like, it's just a bunch of breadcrumbs and you never get to the meal. So television, I'm sort of like, tell them, like, show me a movie, or if you're gonna do a TV series, give me like a mini series. So there is.
I've been
like
so on board with the mini series format. It works so well because like there were so many shows that I got into that just stretched out way too long. Like I either want a show that's like 4 seasons max, unless you're Better Call Saul and you can justify doing 6, and then it's fine. Or just like a mini series like Haunting of Hill House or something like that. I've been rewatching. Actually, I just watched the 3rd episode of Last of Us again. The Last of Us I thought was phenomenal.
That's one I still need to get on board with. But yeah, I like that idea too. What's that?
Have you played the games?
I haven't. I am so behind on modern gaming, Evan. The
Last of Us came out 11 years ago.
Like the first 4.
Yeah.
Oh, and then we froze for another second, but we're back. I play a shitload of Resident Evil 4. So when they remastered that was like my life for a while.
Was so good.
Yeah. So I'd probably absolutely love Last of Us, and maybe that's my worry, is that it would just take up a bunch of my time.
It only takes 10 hours to finish. So.
Oh, okay.
You can get away pretty easily. But there was something I was going to ask you, and now I can't remember what it was. I completely lost my train of thought. Oh, yes. Just based on what you were saying there, if you could do one like reboot or legacy sequel or just continuation or remake or whatever in a franchise, would it be Evil Dead for you?
That's a tough one because it's like there's so much good stuff in there. I mean, that's probably what I'd be most passionate about, is something like Evil Dead. When I saw the first movie, it just sort of like broke away like all of my perceptions about what a movie could be, and that like, you know, 3 people could make a movie. Like, because at some point during the filming, it's just like, I think 3 people on set, you know, towards the end of that shoot. And so I was just like, man, like, you can be really creative. Like, you can still accomplish so much. And sometimes the ambition makes up for a lack of like slick production. And I think that's one of the things that I brought over from, I love punk rock music, and I think I brought that into my love of horror as I got older. But I've been a fan of horror since I was a little kid, but finding punk rock made me realize like, oh, it's the ambition of it all. If I could reboot any series, like I'd want to bring back The Prowler. I think The Prowler's got such a rad look, but I think it's maybe a little bit of a boring movie.
I agree. That would be a remake I would stand behind.
I think you could update it, you know, make it an Iraqi war vet or Afghan, or, you know, just like bring it to that modern setting that we're in, and still tell a really like relatable, great story, and do like a really great whodunit, because I love those. Like, I thought Thanksgiving was awesome, and I'm actually pretty pumped on Thanksgiving, and I feel like a lot of people are just sort of like, it was okay, and I was like, are you kidding me? It is a masterclass in like revenge slashers. Like
I
it's Eli
love
Roth showing his best stuff.
I love like My Bloody Valentine. It's like one of my favorite slasher
Mm-hmm.
movies, and Thanksgiving
Yeah.
felt like such a love letter to that. I
Yeah.
mean, it was a
I
better remake of My Bloody Valentine than the actual fucking remake of My Bloody Valentine. So
Yeah, and I think right there, you know, both My Bloody Valentine and The Prowler are both like 81. I think they're maybe like 5 months apart. They're very similar to one another. And I think that that's that whole, you know, that revenge whodunit slasher. Like I really dig that. So yeah, I'm right there with The Prowler. I think My Bloody Valentine, like bringing it back and making sure that it actually does get a sequel. It's too bad because both movies leave a cliffhanger and nothing ever happened.
yeah,
Like,
because the issue with it is that they're setting the sequel up to be a killer who no one's interested in watching.
yeah.
It's played as a reveal, but there's not really any room for like an interesting slasher movie after that, unless you do
Sure.
another whodunit, which would just feel kind of like trite at that point.
Yeah,
Um,
you'd have to do a copycat kind of thing. I mean, what Axel loses his arm in the first
yeah.
so yeah, it wouldn't be a secret, but I hope that that's what they do with Thanksgiving. Like I really hope that Thanksgiving just continues with the same person that plays John Carver. I don't want to I
Mhm.
don't know if you're in the chat and you haven't seen it. I'm sorry. Go watch Thanksgiving right now and then come back and finish the stream.
Dude, the
But
opening scene of that, like the Black Friday thing or whatever it was one of the
mhm.
craziest sequences. Like, as soon as you see that, you're like, "Holy shit, what am I in for
Yeah.
right now?" It's so good.
Yeah, my wife was like, she needed like a break after
Yeah,
that. She was like, for her, that's the worst part of the movie because it just like really gives her that anxiety. And I'm like, well, I guess that's the kind of the whole point, sort of sets
yeah,
the tone for the rest of it.
totally.
And yeah, I mean, what's not to like about Thanksgiving? I hope that in the sequel, it's just the same guy and it just plays like a regular slasher.
Yep.
And then you could even do a third one where you do have a copycat, and then you've got like your kind of three different sort of
Sure.
slashers, just boom, 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 and people will be a lot happier with that than they were with Halloween Ends, probably.
Probably.
Even
Yeah.
though I love
No,
it.
yeah. No, it wasn't a crowd pleaser though. There's no question about
Yeah,
that.
what
Oh, there you go.
it's funny. Like I saw it, I saw it opening night, and
Yep.
thank you, Jamie. I appreciate that. I'll hit you up in the DMs. I saw it opening night, and we walked out, and I was just thinking that was amazing. Like that was like the curveball that I wanted, and then it was
Mhm.
really funny just to see how everyone was reacting, and it was like, oh shit,
Yeah, I mean that
like
was the
yeah,
hate towards that movie was and still is. It's so crazy. I mean, David Gordon
hmm.
Green, that poor guy, gets so much shit now because of that.
Do you think that poured over into Exorcist Believer? Do you think people were tougher on Exorcist Believer because they didn't like Halloween Ends?
Yes, but I still don't think Exorcist Believer is a good movie. Um, like despite really enjoying Halloween Ends, I was confused as to why they thought that Green's handling of the Halloween franchise would at all translate to The Exorcist. I was like, this doesn't make any sense from the beginning.
Yeah.
And you can see it in the movie. It doesn't work. It doesn't make sense. But I don't think it was nearly as bad as like the broad opinion was at the time that the movie came out. I think there was some good stuff, especially in the first act of that movie, that got overshadowed by the pre-existing hate for David Gordon Green.
There's a hate David Gordon Green bias going on in Exorcist Believer.
I think so.
Yeah, and hopefully he, you know, it's got to be a bummer because they spent a bunch of money on that, and then there he goes. You know, hopefully his next film gets him feeling good again.
Yeah. I mean, he has to know like when he's making these that he's going to get hate for. Like he obviously everyone knew that Halloween Ends was going to be a divisive movie. There was no way that they were like, yeah, this is going to go over well with everyone. This is going to be fine. Um, but yeah, I didn't think Believer was like I didn't even think it was the worst Exorcist movie. I still think Exorcist 2 is worse.
Yeah, I mean, Exorcist
Um,
2 is just a nightmare. Like,
yeah, yeah. I mean, it's kind of fascinating in
yes.
like a morbid curiosity way because the whole time you're just going like how did this happen? Like how does this exist? How did so many people review this thing and look through it over production and people wrote this
Hmm.
script and then said here's your lines and then actors went sounds good and then people with cameras filmed it, and then editors were like, we can put this together, and then distributors were like, yep, we're good.
Yeah.
I don't understand how that happens. So like Exorcist 2 is kind of interesting to watch because of that. But I thought
Yeah.
Believer was a more fun movie, at least. It's like Believer, if it
Yeah.
wasn't an Exorcist movie, I don't think would get nearly the same amount of hate that it does, because it would just be like a bland, generic possession movie, and that can be fun to watch.
Hmm.
But it was The Exorcist name that definitely put a lot, rightfully so, because The Exorcist
Sure.
is, you know, an absolute masterpiece, and it's contender for my favorite movie of all time. So
Yeah, it
I get
is.
it.
Yeah, that original Exorcist is amazing, and it seems like, there's plenty of love for the first film and a ton of love for the third film. But
Mhm.
other than that, it seems like the franchise is pretty spotty, as
Yeah,
far as
as a franchise, I could care less about it. Even as much
yeah.
as I love Exorcist 3, I think it's great. Um, I wish that the
But it
studio
kind of
hadn't
operates.
Sorry?
Oh, sorry, go ahead. Sorry, go ahead.
I was saying I wish that the studio hadn't intervened with the third act of Exorcist 3, because uh, originally Blatty had it filmed much closer to the novel, how the novel ends, which is a more like quiet, subdued ending. But they're like, no, you have to have an exorcism in here. So they kind of just
Hmm.
shoehorn this random priest into the third act of the movie, and then have this really crazy, bombastic exorcism that I feel like takes away from the impact of the movie. And I like the ending quite a bit more in the director's cut, but the footage from that is so rough that it's really just something you
Hmm.
watch out of curiosity and not as like a way to enjoy the film. So I wish the ending was closer to the book,
For sure.
um, but Exorcist 3 is fantastic.
Yeah, and it almost seems like you could just those movies could each be like standalones that exist in this like in that world or whatever. But yeah, for marketing reasons, they're like, no, we can't call it Legion. It's going to be called
Well,
Exorcist 3.
and this is
you
the
know?
thing, like I think it says a lot about The Exorcist that the one sequel that is like widely considered to be very good is almost completely unrelated. I mean, obviously, like it's very tied
Yeah.
into it, but it's a completely different movie. Which is why I'm so excited for Flanagan's Exorcist. Like, I feel so insanely spoiled right now, because if you had asked me a while ago who I would want to do Nosferatu, I would have said Robert Eggers.
Yeah.
Not just because he's my favorite director, but I think because he just would understand that perfectly. If you'd asked me who I
Hmm.
wanted to do Frankenstein, I would have said Guillermo del Toro. And if you asked me who I wanted to do Exorcist, I would have said Mike Flanagan. And all three of those things are happening now. So I'm like, what?
That's wild.
And we're getting Lee Winnell's Wolfman, which I never thought about, but I was so on board when I heard about it, because his Invisible
Yeah.
Man remake is phenomenal.
Yeah. Yeah. I think they've found like some really good, like, creative folks that kind of just have that specific, they have their own sort of specific, like, artistic
Yep.
corner. I think that's what's odd. And so you figure out, like, all right, this person does this thing really well. Let's bring them on over here and have them tackle this project instead of, the way it sort of was when I was growing up, in the 80s, and they were sequelizing these slasher movies. They're just like, who can we get that can just do it and do it in like a month?
Yeah.
Like that was sort of like, like we remember the directors a
Sure.
lot more than most people would because we love the movies, but a lot of them are like one-offs. So yeah, it's amazing. Especially, man, Robert Eggers. I mean, the nerdiest of the nerdy, like his movies are,
Oh, dude.
they're just
It's
the
for
amount of
film
work and
nerds. Yeah.
detail. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like I put on the subtitles because I don't want to miss anything with like the accents and the dialect. I mean, especially with The Witch, like
I
I had
have
to
the
put the
screenplay
subtitles
book
on
for
to
The
be like,
Lighthouse for that same reason.
yeah. And to me, it just makes it more enjoyable. Like I'm that kind of nerd where I'm like, no, I don't mind. Like I want to know about all the detail. Like I want to know about
So
the work that
much.
was put into it,
We can
because then
talk
it
about
makes me
Eggers,
appreciate it.
but I did want to mention Movie Misfits Video said their favorite exorcism movie of all time is The Exorcism of Emily Rose. You, my friend, have phenomenal taste, because that, in my opinion, is easily the greatest exorcism movie that's not The Exorcist.
There you go. Yeah. That's
Exorcism
awesome.
of Emily Rose, my favorite Scott Derrickson movie. I like it more than Sinister and Black Phone. And I think it's a goddamn masterclass in how to do an exorcism movie. It's so good. I got to do a video on it at some point. I've been really,
And
really wanting to.
and I have to add it to the list because I've not seen it, and this is like the third time I've heard about it within the last week. So somebody's telling me something here. And
You gotta watch it.
right now it's you and Chris Snyder from Movie Misfits Video. I know. No judgment. I'm an old man and I'm stuck in my ways. I'm trying to do better, Evan. I'm trying, man.
Well, we'll see.
But yeah, I am compiling a list for the spooky season to be able to watch some new stuff, because that's one thing that my wife is always like, have you seen this? Like, I want to watch something that like neither one of us has seen.
Let me know what you think of this when you watch it.
Hell yeah.
So,
and yeah, Chris has I just want to say Chris's channel is awesome. He's bringing it back. He's rebranded it as Movie Misfits Video, and he's going to be dropping some really cool Saw content and Scream content for like a Who Killed Who, his own take on Who Killed Who. So he's going to be coming back in a big way. So yeah, if you like that, you can get more of him on over there.
That's awesome. Oh yeah, this is a cool looking channel. I'll have to check this out. So what is your most anticipated movie that's coming out this year? Obviously, that isn't out already.
Yeah, I think mine is. I'm really looking forward to It's Me, Billy Chapter 2. I'm a massive, like, every year I become a bigger and bigger Black Christmas fan.
Same.
And I just think like it gets creepier and creepier to me. Same as like Halloween. It just feels it feels very real.
Yep.
Like this is the way that real creeps actually are. And there's something like just really like unhuman about Billy that is intriguing to me. So and I think Dave and Bruce are really smart about what they do. They're, you know, they know what they're doing on the technical side, but then they're also like, you know, really smart fans. So they know how to put together that story that's going to make sense and, you know, fit the world of Black Christmas. So really looking forward to seeing how they wrap that up, because since they're adding to the lore, I really love the way the first one was shot. It had that awesome kind of slow burn. And it seems like the conclusion looks even better, and they brought back the same crew. So I got high hopes for that one.
I have not watched It's Me, Billy, but I will tell you why. Despite Black Christmas being on my Mount Rushmore slasher movies, I think it's absolutely phenomenal. I don't want to know anything else. I want absolutely no context to that first movie.
Yeah.
Because part of the thing that draws me so much to it is how open-ended the conclusion of it is. And I don't want that to be altered in any way. I'm sure that Dave is doing phenomenal work with it. I really, really enjoy Dave's content. And he really understands, especially like slow burn, creeping horror. He gets how to make that work. And I'm sure this is great. But just that like nerd in me is like, I don't want to know anything. And the thing is like, I'm sure that whatever he's doing is going to be so good that I'm going to be thinking about it when I rewatch Black Christmas, and I don't want that.
Yeah, I totally hear what you're saying. And I think, so this is the weird thing too, is like, is Black Christmas really open-ended? Because you can hear through the song at the end that the phone does start ringing again.
This is true.
And they just drugged Jess so she would sleep.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking as the camera pulls away and there's like one police officer like outside the house, I'm like, well, she's dead.
I guess
like,
I just love how creepy it is, and I don't want to know anything else.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I can at least say this for the first chapter is you don't learn anything more about Billy other than he's still alive and still a total creep on the phone. Right. But I am curious to see what they do with it. But I totally get you.
I should mention as well to Movie Misfits, he just keeps winning me over here because his most anticipated movie of the year is Nosferatu.
Yeah, I was going to ask you.
I mean, it's not only my most anticipated movie of the year. This is the most excited I've been for a movie in as long as I can remember. This is by far my number one. I have been waiting for Nosferatu, like Robert Eggers' Nosferatu, for 10 years now, because he was talking about it on the a panel in Salem during the premiere of The Witch. He was talking about wanting to do Nosferatu, and after watching The Witch and getting the Blu-ray, I was like, oh, he would be perfect for this. So I've been following this movie's troubled production with casting issues for literally a decade now. So to finally have it on the horizon, I'm so excited. I think Eggers is just the perfect fit for like a creepy gothic vampire movie, and I cannot wait. What a Christmas present. Oh my
It's
God.
amazing.
It's going to be so good.
Are you going to be in there Christmas Day? Or I mean,
Oh, I
maybe
sure
do you get
am.
to see him? You get to see him early? Does that?
Sometimes I get to
I
see
don't know how.
movies early, but I have been on record saying that if I get offered a screener for Nosferatu, I'm not going to take it because I don't want to see that for the first time, like on a studio, like in my studio on a monitor with like a watermark
Yeah,
on it. Not doing that.
sure.
There are certainly movies where like I've done it, like In a Violent Nature, for example. When I got that screener offer, I was like, definitely, yeah, and I watched it at home. But um, Nosferatu, I would not accept a screener for that. I'm going to be there Christmas Day,
Hell yeah.
100%. I cannot wait.
Now, do you think that this is like the first thing that I thought of when I was like, oh, Robert Eggers is doing Nosferatu. I was like, man, I just hope that doesn't like pull him away from doing his own stuff down the line. Like, I hope I hope that this is the movie that he's wanted to do his whole life, and that he still gets to kind of, create his own stuff, and that he doesn't get dragged into just being like, oh, well, now you're going to adapt this and adapt that. I doubt that he would be that kind of guy.
Do you
Just from
know
what
much
I've
of the
seen.
background on how this came to be?
No.
Okay, so
Enlighten me.
let me put your heart to rest. Nosferatu has been Eggers' passion project since he was a kid. The original movie is the thing that got him into film. He saw like a bootleg cut of it on VHS or something. Saw that 1922 film, and it like formed his love for film and for horror. In high school, he directed a play of Nosferatu. He has been
Jeez.
working to try and get this made for his entire, like, this is the movie that he's been wanting to make. This is, his passion project. And there's more things that I've heard about that he's working on that have me very excited for what's to come after this, but this has been like up to this point the thing that he's been building up to.
Hell yeah.
So,
No, it's
yeah.
I mean he is amazing.
Yeah,
Like
we should also mention, to anyone who's arguing with Devontae in chat, he is a massive troll. He's
yeah,
been
I took care of him.
yeah, okay.
Yeah, please.
He's been an issue on my channel since I started, basically, since I covered Exorcist. So
I've seen him in Dave's chats and everything. Yeah,
yeah.
I've had to boot him out of here before. So
He'll just he will
he's
probably come back with an alt account.
oh, for sure. Yeah, friggin' Devontae.
Yeah.
I think
So
Cody Snyder calls him devoted Devontae.
yeah. So if anyone sees him in chat, just ignore him. It's not worth it.
Yeah, or any of the mods, just kick his ass out.
Yep. We don't want that energy. It's all
Yeah,
love,
not at
baby.
all. Exactly. The Substance is Necro's most anticipated. I thought that trailer looked pretty interesting. I also really like seeing, I like seeing Dennis Quaid kind of let it fly and do a little something different too. So yeah, that one kind of came out of nowhere. Pretty cool. And then what Heretic is coming out? I can't tell how I feel about that. I don't know. It seems like maybe they give away the thing in the trailer, and
yeah,
they didn't need to. I don't know, because I'm like, oh, I feel like I watched the movie now. Like I know he's a creep. So
yeah, I mean, that's just to be expected at this point. The trailer's just gonna give away all the interesting stuff.
Yeah,
I mean, the Speak No Evil trailer did it too.
Yeah, I won't even watch. Like I saw the early teaser to Terrifier 3, but I did not watch the other trailer.
I did watch the other trailer. I probably won't watch any more marketing material.
Yeah.
I'm not making any more videos on it. As I said in my last video where I covered that, because I'm working on a colossally big Terrifier 2 video right now that bloated to about twice the size of my normal videos. So that's
you were talking about that last week, like after listening to the commentary and really kind of diving into all the all the lore that Leone maybe didn't really get to fit in, but
it's something that fit it in. Is that it's hinted at, but most of it is through like very vague symbolism. So you have to like kind of, if you're gonna pick up on it without someone kind of guiding you in that direction, you have to have a lot of knowledge of like biblical imagery and symbolism in order to like piece it all together, which I certainly don't. So the director's commentary was a huge help in clearing some of that up. But there's a lot of meat to that movie that I don't think gets acknowledged nearly as much as it deserves to be.
Yeah, for sure. I think it I mean, you know my thoughts because we talked about it last week, but it just seems like the sequel took every like really made it a movie and a true story, or not a true story, but a an actual like, you know, narrative. And then seems like the third one here, like we could get, some answers to some questions, hopefully some more questions that can be answered later. I don't see them stopping with this thing. I think they're gonna ride this train as long as they can. And like,
Mm.
why the hell not? Because art is on everyone's t-shirt when I go to a convention. And, regardless of whether or not people think that he's iconic or an icon at this point, like if he isn't yet, he is on his way.
Walk into a
Um,
Spirit Halloween and tell me he's not an icon.
yeah, I mean that's kind of my, and it's like I think some people are just like, well, let's wait until the third movie comes out, and it's like, but the hype's so big, it feels like the third movie's already
I
out.
mean,
Like,
I'm willing to do that. Like, if you want to treat Terrifier 2 as him, like, putting the ball on the T-post and see if he can hit a home run with 3, then sure. But
yeah,
I think it's gonna happen. Like, I mean, people are
yeah.
already buying the Christmas tree sunglasses.
Oh my gosh, yeah. Absolutely. People are rushing to Spirit to try to get the full size art. Like it's one of these things that's like, they're
Yeah.
running out, it's pretty amazing stuff. Like it's especially coming from the age that I came from, of course there was Ghostface when I was a little bit older and everything like that, but I feel like a lot of people were sort of like, where like is that just an era that's gone and you can't do that again? You can always bring back Michael, Freddie, and Jason, but we're not
Mm.
going to have like those iconic characters that we can lean on. But
That's what I thought.
yeah,
Because there'd
but
been
here
no
we
one that
go.
came around in so long to, like, prove it. But,
Yeah.
uh, yeah, it I don't know. I think and part of what made it work so well was that it wasn't just art that was so good, although obviously that's a huge thing. It was Sienna for me is such a huge
Mhm.
reason that that movie works so well. She's such a phenomenal final girl.
Yeah, she's great. Great performance
Oh
too,
my
and you
god.
really do feel like that connection with her. And I mean, even the music I think is really great. Paul Wiley's score is amazing in the first film, and then I think like introducing like the synthwave tracks in the second film just gives it this added layer of complexity and just kind of shakes it up a little bit. And
Yeah,
they, oddly enough, like they pair together really well, which was
totally.
something I thought have I thought that of like Halloween Ends. Like I wouldn't necessarily listen to those tracks just like while I'm chilling out at home. But like all of the pop songs that they put in the movie, I'm like, well, this fits, like it just feels so good
Oh
watching the
yeah.
movie. It's interesting the way that film can do something like that, like take something, sort of put it into context and have it be so much more enjoyable than it would be, or at least for some jerk like me that only listens to loud, fast punk rock music.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's pretty powerful stuff. And then I was even, you know, one of the things that's interesting about like, pairing the two, the visual and the audio. And I'm curious, I know you've got to head out here shortly, but I'm curious to know, like, do you think, I kind of think audio is more important than visuals, because it's like if you listen to a movie and close your eyes, like you could still picture things. And I just feel like that sound design and the music is so important. And then have you ever thought about like how crazy it is that for the most part, like John Carpenter is not only shooting the movie or directing the movie, but he's also controlling the soundtrack, and how powerful that can be.
Oh, I mean, 100%. I'm trying to remember who it was that said this, but there was a quote from someone that said, "If you want to make a horror movie not scary, cover your ears, don't close your eyes." And
Yeah.
I think that's absolutely true. Like, audio, you can have, I think you can even look at like YouTube as an example. You can have shit video quality, but if your audio is good, people will still watch your video. But
Yeah.
if you have, amazing video quality and your audio sucks, people are going to click off immediately,
Yeah.
which just, it's such a testament to how important sound is when it comes to consuming media. Uh,
Hmm.
yeah,
There's something so visceral about sound sometimes too. Like not even just jump scare sounds, but like just, feeling the weight of an object when you're watching a movie, and the
oh,
sound really helps sell that.
totally.
Um yeah, it's remarkable.
You can transform
And
a
then,
scene through proper sound design.
Absolutely. Yeah, and with what you're doing with your book, like, writing a book and writing music to go along with it, I think is sort of like the literary version of that. But I mean, I think, movies are literature, obviously, that they're just
Totally.
like the next extension of literature. But I mean,
Yeah.
like, just to be able to pair a book with some music, like that is a pretty killer concept. And something that I haven't heard of before, but granted, I'm not the biggest reader. Um, Sometimes I just fall asleep when I try to read.
No,
It's
that's fair.
shameful, I
I
know.
wasn't much of a reader like most of my life, and then I think when I was like 20 or something, I was like, I gotta stop using my phone so much before I go to bed. It's like because my head's always spinning enough as it is, so I was like, I need to stop
Yeah.
filling it with other shit before I go to sleep. Um, so I decided to reread all the Harry Potter books because I hadn't read those since I was a kid. And then I was like, wow, that's pretty great. So I just bought like a ton of Stephen King, Haunting of Hill House. I read that. Went through the Halloween novelizations. Uh, my girlfriend just bought me Dracula, which I'm going to
Oh,
read
hell
before
yeah.
Nosferatu drops. And now I love reading, and now I want to be a writer. So it definitely
Damn.
changed a lot for me.
That's amazing, man. That's awesome to find something like that that just sort of you fall in love with it and then it inspires you, you
Yeah,
know?
fell out of the sky. Yeah,
A really good one. I mean, I love, if you haven't read Jaws, I recommend that one.
actually
I think
haven't.
I do think the movie's better, but there's some really cool elements that the book has that, are some of them are sort of oddball, but some of them, I don't want to say too much, but man, all I can say is that opening scene. I'm like, that
Yeah,
it's one of the best like first few pages of a book that I've read.
awesome.
And then if you like the older like horror stuff, like I do think Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde's friggin' awesome. I've always been like I've loved that character and that story for so long, ever
Totally.
since I was like 6 years old, and it would be so awesome to see a real good interpretation of that because I don't think that's one that we've gotten since 1931.
Oh yeah, no, you can make it work very, very well, but um, you got me thinking now in terms of like usually there's always the phrase the book is better, and I heard you always hear that. Oh, Grumpy Gorehound, yeah, pleasure to meet you too, man. Thanks for tuning in.
Take care, man.
Um, that phrase always annoyed me, and then I started reading, and I was like, oh, that's usually true.
Yeah.
Generally speaking, it is true that the original novel is better than the adapted film, even if the film is very good. Even as someone who's a huge fan of The Exorcist, I still think the book is better.
Hmm.
Um, Book of Legion is definitely better. But one where I do think that the movie was better was The Shining. Uh, totally, like I read The Shining and Doctor Sleep. I liked Doctor Sleep more as a novel, but my favorite
Hmm.
is still the movie of The Shining. I think just kind of transcended all of that. That's just such a perfect horror movie to me. There was a night last winter where we had a massive blizzard, and I had the house all to myself, and I had just bought myself a nice fancy bottle of single malt scotch. So what I did was I shut off all the lights in my house. I got under a big, heavy, fluffy blanket. I threw on The Shining and I poured out some of that scotch, and it was absolute heaven.
Yeah. No, that's a perfect like movie to watch when in isolation, you
Oh
know.
my god, Lighthouse as well. It's another great one to do.
Hmm.
In
Hateful Eight, I
isolation.
think, is another good
Yep,
isolation movie.
love that
Yeah.
movie.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the cool things about Kubrick is, he generally worked off of other people's creations and he would just sort of take the turns that he wanted to take with them. And I know
Yep.
that, originally Stephen King I think he's kind of come around to the film The Shining.
Yeah.
But I think there is something to be said for like, well, if you're translating it to a different medium, like if you're not the one directing it, Steven, you kind of got to let the person like
Yeah.
do their thing with it too, you
Well,
know?
and I think I like to a degree I kind of understand where he was coming from that, even if I disagree with his opinion on it, or at
Mhm.
least on what his opinion was. Um, the novel is a very personal story about his struggles with alcoholism, and he
Mhm.
kind of put himself into Jack's character. So when the movie made him much more of like a villainous character, and threw away a lot of the alcohol abuse themes that were present in the novel.
Hmm.
I feel like he kind of felt like he was being robbed of a very personal story and it was
Sure.
being twisted. So I do get that.
Yeah.
I understand where the frustration comes from, even if I disagree with the take.
Yeah, you just got to let Kubrick be a total madman, right?
Yep.
I think that's why 2001 works really well, because he was writing that story as Arthur C. Clarke was writing the book. So they were
Hmm.
doing it simultaneously and sort of agreeing on like, well, we'll hit this point and we'll hit this point. We're going to find different ways to get there.
Sure.
And I think that's one of the things like for Kubrick, that's, something that he probably has to have, I would imagine. Yeah, and Gavin says here, I've never read Carrie, but that original movie is perfect.
I haven't read it yet either. I've got a copy of it sitting around. But
Yeah, it's I had heard you said, I think it was, I was watching your appearance on my first horror film on Sledgehammer Horror, and you had talked about how you hope we get yet another at some point, get that It movie that really, packs everything from the book in there.
yeah, I would want it. I would want it to be like a 10-episode series,
There you go.
something like that. But yeah, I mean, it is my favorite novel. I think it's absolutely beautiful. Like literally, I was reading the last scene of that book and I was in tears. It's a
Wow.
beautiful book. Very, very dark, much darker than either of the movies go. And there's also
Hmm.
things that you can't and shouldn't want to adapt to the screen. Uh,
Yeah.
so some changes absolutely have to be made. But
Yeah.
I would love a really good. I mean, harkening back to our question earlier about what you would kind of reboot, I think I would want to do that. I wanted to try and
You'd
tackle.
want to
Yeah,
tackle it,
yeah, or
tackle it with a couple
I,
couple of the things, James.
either it or I would want to do another Fog movie because I think the Fog is one of the most underrated John
Oh.
Carpenter flicks.
Yeah, that soundtrack is incredible, and just the
Dude,
whole like ghost story vibe.
I
I
love
think
coastal horror so much.
I think The Fog it's the perfect like gateway kind of horror movie. Like if you think your kid maybe can't handle all the
Yep.
blood and guts, like you can watch The Fog.
It was also the last movie I watched with my father, so there's a bit of now a sentimentality with the Fog as well. So
Mm,
that would definitely
yeah,
weigh into why I would want to tackle that one.
absolutely. That's an incredibly like powerful thing about film too, is like the every time you watch a movie, you have memories of the previous times that you've watched the
100%.
movie,
Yeah.
and it's kind of like sometimes even with music, it's like sometimes I feel like I listen to a record from a certain time in my life, I can smell the things from
Oh
like
yeah.
that
Well, my
era,
dad was a
it's
guitar
just
teacher, so that was his job. So that was certainly a part of it. I mean, we got into all this last week when we were on with Ken and Ashley watching Terrifier.
Mhm.
We got onto that exact same topic.
Yeah, it's pretty incredibly powerful stuff for
Oh
sure.
yeah, 100%.
Well, shoot, I've had you on here for about an hour. I know it's really late out where you're at and you've got
Yeah,
an early start to the day.
yeah,
So
very early.
I appreciate you, working with the late hours here, or the late night, rather. So, thank you so much, man. It was great having a chat with you here. Guys, you can follow Evan over at Rocklin Graves Productions. I've got the links down below for the YouTube channel and his Insta and his Twitter. So,
I guess I should start
yeah,
promoting that. I've been using Twitter and I haven't promoted it at all. So, oh hey
it's
Dylan, what's up, buddy?
It's Twitter is tough. Like for me, no one cares about anything I do on Twitter really,
Yeah,
because don't follow, because I
he's
don't say
right.
anything like wild or controversial on Twitter. I'm usually like, "Hey,
Yeah,
I've got a video." Like,
yeah,
and everyone's like, "Who the hell are you?" And I'm like, "I'm no one. Pay no attention. See ya."
yeah,
Uh,
yeah. Dylan's calling me a nerd when he's the one who bought a CRT TV just to accompany his VHS copy of Terrifier 2.
yeah. Yeah, you should, and you know what? He could have been even nerdier and gotten one to accommodate his N64, GoldenEye parties or
It's
something like
true.
that, right?
It's
You had to
true.
wait for Terrifier. Come on, Dylan. Uh,
Yeah.
Davey is love. Davey is life. That's too
Thanks
sweet.
for the show. I apologize for how tired I've been throughout this stream. It's been a hectic little while. I've been working. I literally started working at 8 o'clock this
Oh
morning,
my
and
gosh,
I'm like just now
Jesus.
finishing working.
Well, shit, man. Yeah, I really do appreciate you, accommodating our time as well. And the next time we put a little something together, let's do it pre-recorded and it can work for everyone.
Yeah, yeah, totally. I would love to do something else with you, man. This has been a ton of fun.
Hell yeah, man. Well, thank you so much. Have a great rest of your night and be well and have sweet dreams of Nosferatu here for Christmas.
I dream of it every night.
All right, take care, Evan.
Right on. Cheers. Get fucked, Dylan.